everybody. Welcome to the Blue Ribbon Lounge podcast.
Welcome back to the lounge. Here we are, 2-year mark.
2 years, 2 beautiful years.
Yes, and we're also halfway to Halloween.
Oh,
Rattling chains.
yeah.
So everybody has an idea in their head. You say the word vampire. So to clear up any misconceptions, brought in an expert.
Expert.
Yes.
A vampire hunter.
Yes. Born in Virginia, raised all over the country, and now is currently the queen of the Carolina Outback. We have Miss Kamla Big Cam Face.
Thanks
Hello.
for being here, Cam.
Oh, you guys have no idea how excited I am to be here.
Actually, no idea. I usually dread when Dave comes over here, so... No, we're happy to have you here. We know you've been listening to the podcast for a while. Glad to have you on. Number one fan.
I'm a day oneer.
Day oneer.
From the get.
Those were some hard episodes to get through. Do you have any memorable episodes?
I think I liked them all. The Moon Rock one was really cool.
That was a really good one.
Yeah.
Interesting story behind all that, for sure.
Yeah.
I like the part where they had sex on the bed.
For me, it was trying to get the safe out. That was interesting. But the Tsunami Ghost was also an interesting episode.
Yeah, it was weird how many things happened at one time.
Yeah. And also interesting how people dealt with the aftermath of the tsunami by, like, getting guidance or, like, acceptance, like closure.
Closure,
by
yeah,
seeing
for sure.
ghosts. Yeah.
Which is definitely, I feel like, a long-standing history of big traumatic experiences like that. Oh, before we get started on vampirism, I wanted to give a shout-out to Hollywood Dave.
Oh, yeah?
It's his birthday. I don't know, coming up, coming down, somewhere around now. Happy birthday, Hollywood Dave.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Hopefully we can get him back on to keep the New Year's going.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Also, we haven't done it in a while, Davey, but we got a beer we're going to be drinking.
Yeah, we do. It's Snickerdoodle Cream Ale.
Oh, I shouldn't have opened it yet, because you can't read anything off of it.
Right. And where'd you get this from?
That's from Front Street Brewing. It's got a friend of mine on the can, Sherry Baby. She's a big pinup model around here, won a ton of competitions, but they put her face right on that thing.
Is she the same, the Cherry Bomb blonde?
No, but they're friends.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I got that can. Jenna Sue, who does a lot of work with Front Street, I think she found and dressed Sherry for this photo shoot. And then they have another artist who does all the digital put-togethers before it goes onto the sign, or onto the can.
Yeah, because they make it look like it almost painted.
Yeah. And I also have another one we're going to do, I think maybe next week, of Red Baron Ale.
Oh.
And that's got another friend of mine on.
That's good.
Oh, what are you drinking something over there, Cam? In the Far East?
I have a PBR.
Ooh, that's what I'm talking about.
Have you ever had one before?
No.
There we go. Try it out together. I've never actually had one either. So.
Hey, cheers, everybody, to 2 delicious years.
Cheers. Yep, tastes like a beer.
That's what I like.
Beer tasting beer?
This does taste like liquid candy, this Snickerdoodle.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of a little sweet.
Yeah. Oh, 2-year anniversary, Dave. I got you something. Did you get me anything?
Oh, find out. What'd you get me?
I got you one of these numbers.
Oh, shit, look at that.
Blue Ribbon Lounge t-shirt.
We got some merch.
Yes.
It's a tryout. Oh, I see that you're wearing it.
Yep, this is the tryout. I washed mine, and it still looks pretty good. A buddy of mine from Dirty Biker Designs, friend of the pod, he had these printed up as like a congratulations type thing, and we're hoping to get a bunch more, and maybe all you listeners out there, if you'd like one, we'll figure out a price for how much the shirt, the design costs, and get some maybe shipped out. Hopefully.
Get some merch going on?
Yeah.
Here you go, Matt. I did get you something.
Oh, look at this. A 3-cheese pizza? Would purchase some any pizza from Low Pies? 2 of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to get 4 pizzas at one time with this.
Go for it.
Thank you, Davey.
You're welcome.
So yeah, we've got T-shirts. Got some gifts out of the way. Having some cold drinks.
Yeah.
On to vampirism.
Or
How about you, Cam? You got any good places to recommend? Where are you from again?
I am pretty much in the middle of North Carolina. We're in Gibsonville, which is like 20 minutes from Greensboro.
Okay. Are there any good restaurants or anything you recommend when we come out and visit you?
I mean, if you love sushi, there's a great sushi place. Terasaki is amazing. We love that place. Burgers, you got to go to Greensboro, though.
Okay.
There's a couple of places. I mean, no, we have a lot of chains. We don't have too many mom and pops. So
Hey, that's right. That means when you find the diamonds, they're even shinier than anywhere else. You got to find the good spots and keep going.
absolutely.
a famous hot dog place there?
Oh, Zach. I don't want to talk about Zach. Zach's sold Zach, and now Zach's has been franchised. There's now 3 different locations, and it's just not the same.
Oh, they Starbucked them?
Starbucks.
Yeah, it sucks.
That sucks. I'm sorry. I've
Yeah,
never been there, but
Zach's was actually our grandpa's favorite place to go.
Really?
okay.
Yeah.
And now, Dave, is most of your family out there?
Yeah,
On
East
the
Coast.
East Coast?
Yeah. We're East Coast.
Yeah. But you grew up around here.
Yeah.
And you grew up around here, Cam?
Yeah.
Right on the river?
Pleasant Valley.
PV.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of rich kids.
No.
River rats.
River rats.
Closer to LeClaire than PV.
That's why we really connect. A couple of river rats over here.
Yeah.
Do you miss anything? You ever come back?
I haven't been back in like 15 years, but yes, I miss it a lot, a lot. Just, the people there are so nice. I miss Whitey's,
Oh, that's
which
a good one.
is a big thing. The Hungry Hobo was my go-to. I love Hungry Hobo.
That's what's up. That's always a tradition for when it's like a Mother's Day or my mom's birthday or something. Grab a couple of sandwiches, head over there and hang out. Hungry Hobo, you can't beat that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Casey's Taco Pizza.
Oh, the taco pizza. I'm a
Yeah,
breakfast
it's
pizza kind of guy.
way better than Happy Joe's.
Oh, okay.
And
I
yes,
don't know if
I
I've
said
had it
that.
in a long. I don't think I've had it in a long time. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Even though she hasn't been here for 15 years, she's a typical Quad Cities girl. Probably has a Harris Pizza, then gets the Whitey's when you pick up your Hungry Hobo.
Absolutely. And Hy-Vee Chinese is the best.
Yep. Hy-Vee Chinese.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
And you get so much food.
Right. For cheap Chinese
Yeah,
food.
I think so.
Good. Like
Anything else you got, Dave? Get right into the sandwich. Get done with these cheese fries.
I need to give a shout out to my youngest, Alice. She's like, Mom, you got to shout me out. And I was like,
Oh,
okay.
there you go.
So, hello to Alice.
Alice. Yes, because Alice gets tormented on the way to school because that's when she listens to our podcast. That's why she's driving to get to school.
That's what's up. Hey, they're learning a lot. It's like school
Yes.
before school.
Absolutely.
That's why we.
Speaking of kids listening to the pod in the back seat, a trigger warning for some of the stuff I saw. We're talking about vampires, so inherently some blood, maybe some gore. And so if you hear anything you don't like or want to hold off on this episode, just hit the old pause or Rooney, but make sure you listen to it later.
I tried to keep the gory stuff out, just in case.
I collected it all. I was like, anything. I Googled gory vampire information, and this is what it spit out to me.
GPT it.
Yeah, I ChatGPT'd it.
Well, I have a question for you guys before we start talking about vampires. So, if a vampire can't come into your house without being invited, but a policeman can come into your house with a warrant, can a vampire policeman come into your house?
I would say no.
Yeah, but he does have permission, just not from the homeowner.
Right, but I think it's like an umbrella thing. Like all iguanas are lizards, but not all lizards are iguanas. All policemen can serve your warrants, but not all vampire policemen can. Maybe it's all wrong.
Not all cops are vampires?
Yeah, not all cops are bastards.
Okay.
Well, that's another episode, I guess. I say no. I say no to that one. I like to hope I'm safe in my homestead.
From vampires.
Right.
Even
You
if they're cops.
won't get your neck bit. Might get stepped on.
Yeah.
That would have been a good one for this episode. A bunch of vampire jokes.
Oh, yes.
I don't know. Maybe I'll Google some and see if I can find some for the middle of the pod.
But according to Merriam-Webster, vampire is the reanimated body of a dead person believed to come from the grave at night and suck the blood of persons asleep. Or one who lives by preying on others. Or a woman who exploits and ruins her lover. That's what the dictionary says.
Oh, I had one from Don Augustine Kelmet in 1746. And this was just like an accounting of vampires. Dead men who have been dead for several months, are heard to speak, walk, and infest hamlets and villages, injure both men and animals whose blood they drain, thereby making them sick and ill, and at length actually causing death. The name given to these ghosts is Ubir, or vampire, which in Slavic tongue means bloodsucker. Ubir? So Ubir?
Ubir?
I don't know. My Slavic is pretty rusty, so it could translate a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're getting the full taste of the Lurin Lounge. There's a lot of awkward pauses where me and Dave just look at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I actually didn't look up a definition. I figured everybody knew what a vampire was.
You didn't get any tips from Dave on how the episodes roll?
No, I just started Googling.
Yeah, he's the definition guy anyway, so I always trust that he'll hit a Webster's website before he sounds fine.
Usually, and if I don't, it'll be the one time that you did.
Yeah.
It works out like that.
Do you guys have any favorite myths or concepts about vampires other than vampire police officers? I'm assuming they work the night shift.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because vampires can't go out at night unless they're Blade.
Blade. Yeah, I was gonna watch that too. I had like 3 movies lined up to watch. Blade was one of them, and I didn't get around to any of them.
Yeah, but there's a name for that where a vampire has sex and then has a baby, and they're like Defear or something. But it's
Defear is in you.
They have vampire traits, but they also have human traits. That's what Blade's based on.
Heck yeah. Oh, it's based on like an actual concept?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And did you want to know what else was based on an actual concept?
I would love for you to tell me.
The Count.
The Count. They count?
The Count.
Oh, no.
From Sesame Street. In Chinese culture, they're vampires. If you throw a handful of rice or any kind of small items like pebbles, they have to stop and count them all.
That's like the salt thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Speak 2 things to roll off of that. It was interesting to find that it seems like most of these happenings seemed around Western Europe. Or was it Eastern Europe, maybe? I think maybe Eastern Europe.
Yeah. Romania.
Yeah.
Serbia. Those places over there.
Yep. But they mostly seem to come from Western Europe. But a lot of areas do have superstitions of the living dead and coming to affect the living, as well as there was something else you said there that I was going to talk about. I forgot though.
The salt thing.
The salt thing. Yes. It seems like vampires, and this might be common, but they're pretty related to demons and the devil and all sorts of witchcraft like that. So it would make sense, like the salt you put around for demons, because they have to count everything, every grain. It would make sense why some of those would come over to vampires as well.
Yes.
Well, when I was looking up vampire lore, I found a thing about Romanians when they have people that die and how they, I guess, set up the coffin. They put candles in the four corners so that they have light. The dead people have light inside, and they actually put cover the bottom with poppy seeds. And so if they come back, they have to count each and every poppy seed.
Oh, okay.
But they also put gunpowder in there so that they'd be too afraid to come out.
Gunpowder? That's
The
interesting.
gunpowder and poppy seeds are kind of the same color, so I feel like that would be confusing.
Yeah.
So,
And I would assume
Right.
if they had the same effect, you got to count all the little granules of the gunpowder too, right?
right. And then they rub garlic around it because that's supposed to help you relax when you're dead.
Yeah, some of the things I heard about garlic was that garlic has always had like a blood purifying and healing property. And they also at that time were believed to prevent demons and witches, and therefore kind of transferring over to vampires. When somebody would die, they would often stuff garlic in the mouth to prevent the soul from re-entering the body.
Yeah, and it's
That's
also
interesting.
it also relates to its pungent smell. Back in the day, they didn't really know how germs worked, but they knew that bodies stunk, and if they could get rid of the smell, then they would get rid of the bad germs. They didn't know what germs were, but the bad diseases that would come from dead things. If they could cover up the smell of it, they felt like they couldn't get to them.
Yeah.
So then they would use the pungent smell of the garlic to keep that at bay, and then therefore, since vampires are undead, then they can keep them away.
Yeah, and that was an interesting thing for sure. Is that it's interesting to consider that this was science at the time.
Yeah.
You know, before they knew how bacteria and these disease worked, they only had these limited resources to consider. I had seen some of the like lead up to why they would think people were coming back to life was not 100% knowing how the body worked, between people falling ill and then potentially even going into comas, and so you would bury them alive, and you would find like scratch marks, and people would have moved, as well as even after death, I believe your fingernails grow a little bit, your blood sometimes coagulates, sometimes doesn't.
Yeah.
Compared to like the time of year, some of these stories I had heard happened towards autumn, and so the cold weather in those areas would keep bodies from decomposing quite as fast.
Yeah.
And so that when you dug them up, it would look like a fairly normal body and not decomposed to the amount that the current experts would think.
Well, it wasn't just, they're underground and they're in a box. So they're not getting that air. So it's also not helping to decompose and whatnot. And there's not the bloating that you would see if you found somebody 2 weeks after they died. Because it wasn't like you can be like, oh, I haven't seen so-and-so for a couple of days, let's call them up. You know, you might have to trek to their house, and if they've been dead for 4 days, they're going to be bloated and gross and whatever.
Which is funny because I feel like that's a religious thing. The preservation of bodies for the living. They try to treat the body with as much respect as you can, because you want to show the body respect, and burying them in caskets and in graveyards, as well as the belief of demons and an afterlife and the soul. Those things put together created longer lasting bodies, and you have to now explain that.
Yeah, that's also one of the reasons why they used to do the wakes, where they would lay the body out on a table, just in case the person wasn't dead and came back to life.
Are you
Like they
seeing this?
just like you were saying, like they got bit by a bee or stung by a bee, and maybe they went into anaphylactic shock, and they were just in a coma, and then they would come out of their coma.
So before, like, there's been stories like way back in the past about vampires and stuff. They're not humans; they were like gods and stuff.
Oh, really?
And like one of the oldest ones was, I don't know how to say this, Sekhmet, Sekhmet,
Oh, that's a good try. Segment.
which was like an Egyptian goddess, which was a lion-headed warrior goddess
Ooh, that's cool.
that Ra sent down to take care of some of the people that were talking smack about him.
I did hear that a lot of vampirism not came from Egypt, but that was some of the first recordings of it.
Yeah, because she was sent down to kind of stop people from talking smack about him. And once she killed her first victim and got a taste for blood, she just went crazy. And actually, almost like before Ra could see what's going on, she killed like half of the mortals.
Oh, damn.
And so to stop her, he mixed
Garlic.
well, he like dyed alcohol red and then poured it into the Nile and turned the whole Nile red.
That's a thing, right?
Yeah. And when she saw it, she started drinking. And she's drinking the Nile until she like passes out and like
In denial.
yeah, and like calmed her down so that she could return, back to the other world. And her followers would dye their alcohol red in like remembrance of her.
Oh, why?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Isn't there like
That's cool.
isn't there like a what was the like when the Jews escaped Egypt or something like that? The Nile River.
That was the parting of the Red Sea.
Oh, whoops.
But that wasn't one of the. They turned water into blood then too.
So that Jesus cat did that.
Or God, Jesus wasn't around then.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Well, that's
No,
where
Moses did all that when he brought down the 7 plagues.
but that was because God said He helped him out if the Pharaoh didn't let him go.
I'll help you guys out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was one of the seven plagues that he brought down so that Moses' people could be set free.
Parting the Red Sea.
That was when they
Parting the Red Sea was after they were freed.
So there was the rivers will run red.
Yeah.
In that what'd you call them? The 7
Plagues.
Yeah. That's a word.
That is a word. But there. Did you guys get anything on Peter Blagojevich?
Peter Blagojevich. I don't believe I did.
No, I don't have anything on Peter.
The pumpkin eater.
In 1732, he lived in Serbia, and he got sick. He died, and probably like tuberculosis or something. But then later, a couple of his neighbors said they saw him. Like,
oh, wait, hold on. You have the wrong person. Because I have the exact same thing, but his name is Arnold, and it was in 1725 in Serbia. Exact same thing.
2 guys.
Yeah, there was 2 guys, yeah. Because I do have that one written down, but I didn't have
Paoli? What's his last name?
Paoli?
Paoli?
Yeah, Paoli. Paole.
Yeah. Well, the Paoli guy, you want to tell that story to them, Cam?
Yeah, he had been roaming around doing his thing, and he claimed that he had been plagued by vampires. And he claimed that he got rid of them by finding their graves, eating the dirt, and then smearing their blood on him.
Oh.
Yeah, to get rid of the curse.
Oh,
right. And then he died like a couple weeks later. And then a couple weeks after that, 4 villagers claimed that Arnold had been harassing them. So they kind of did the same thing that he had done, and then they died 40 days later. And then 40 days after that,
Damn, 40 days.
Yeah, they did like an inquiry into their deaths and dug them up. And they were like not decomposed at all. Their fingernails had grown, their hair had grown. So everybody was like freaking out, and they're like, "Oh, they're vampires too." So they went back to Arnold's coffin, dug him up, same thing. So they said that his shirt and the shroud was covered in blood. So they staked him with a wooden stake through his heart, and they claim he began shrieking and groaning and bleeding. So they cut off his head, burned his body, and then placed the ashes back in the coffin. But they didn't do anything to the other people that they claimed he had been terrorizing and had killed. And then in 1731, 17 people got sick and died. They reported the death, and then they asked somebody to come and look into those. They dug them up. They seemed to be in the same condition as Arnold. How you pronounce his name?
Paoli.
So then they asked for the military to come and execute the vampires. And then I guess, David, your story would come in about then.
Yeah.
But then I have 1731, but then I have what happened after your guy, with the Vienna and Australian emperors.
Oh, okay. Well, it was Peter Blagojevich. He died when he was 62, and they said his neighbors saw him walking around, and then they died of some kind of disease where they also had a loss of blood, and they weren't quite sure if it was because he was drinking their blood or just because he was a dead body walking around, just spreading disease and bugging people, making them sick. And then the last straw was when he tried to barge into his own house, but his son wouldn't let him in. And then the next day, his son was found dead with no blood. And so his wife went to the church to see what they could do about it. And the clergy was like, because when the first couple people died, the authorities were like, well, we don't want to desecrate this grave. That's unholy. So then she went to the church to see what she could do, and they're like, well, I guess we got to dig him up because even if it's just spreading disease, maybe not a vampire, we still got to do something with it. And when they dug him up, they saw his fingernails looked like they grew, and his teeth got bigger, and he had kind of blood around his mouth, and his belly was all bloated, just finished drinking a bunch of blood. So they stabbed him in the heart twice, and blood started pouring out of his eyes and ears. And then, they set the body on fire and then buried him back up, and then nobody got sick again. So either something happened there that, stopped the spread of whatever was going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting what they would have changed after all of that. Because it obviously wasn't, well, I guess maybe it could have been him coming from back in the dead and eating people. But you wonder what it was that they did to prevent the more people getting sick.
Yeah, if it was just maybe he was diseased and getting rid of the body got rid of the problem.
Yeah, that could be it.
Were you talking about the
vampire
Austria?
No, I was talking about the vampire laws that were enacted after that. Because all of this, I don't know if your guy, but my story around Arnold, they finally just anybody that said that they had come into contact with them that died, a lot of people in this village had died, which I had written down, but there's no way I'm going to pronounce that word.
You got to try. That's the name of the podcast.
Okay, it is Meduegina, Meduegina. So word got back to Vienna, and I didn't write down any of these names because I definitely was not going to get them right. And the Austrian emperor ordered an inquiry into the death. So he sent 3 field surgeons and 2 officers to the village, because everybody that they dug up, there was no decomposition. They all looked like Arnold. There was blood on them. So they figured out the common factor was Arnold, and that he had also, the villagers then claimed that he was also killing the sheep and draining them of blood. So they burned everything. And then after they had staked them, cut their head off, burned them, stuck everything back in the ashes, they were like, "That's it, it's done."
Yeah, because
and nobody.
They were saying that those 17 people that got turned after Arnold's death, however many years later, is because of him fighting the sheep and then them eating the sheep meat. So they were like vampire sheep or cows.
Vampire sheep.
Yes.
Damn. They get you coming and going.
Right. So they sent a report back to the Austrian emperor, and it was later published and became a bestseller, and it's called Vicium et Repertum. So then the Catholic Church got involved and concluded that it was a result of human fantasy, and anyone claiming to see a vampire needed spiritual counseling. So a monk got involved and said no vampires, however, the bodies were animated by demons. So then a debate came about which one it was. Was it vampires? Is it demons? So then the Empress of Austria got involved, and she passed the vampire laws of 1755. And she said the people's panic was the result of fraud and gullibility, and she stated that anyone talking about vampire attacks should be reported to authorities, who would then investigate and punish the tricksters behind the attack. So she was saying that it was just normal people saying this stuff and doing these things, and that they should be punished.
That sounds like exactly what a vampire would say.
Right. She also made it illegal to desecrate a grave.
Yeah, she was the Empress Maria Theresa. And yeah, she got her own physician to go out and be like, "Tell me what's going on." And he went around the country and did all this research and came back like 2 weeks. So that she's like, "You can't desecrate graves, you can't mess up the bodies, stop doing this."
Which is funny because demons are real for sure.
Yeah.
But vampires are not.
Right.
Right.
And that was actually in the 18th century. It was called the vampire. I say it in my head, but it's controversy.
Not controversy.
No,
controversy.
Yes. Oh. And then when she laid these rules down, it kind of stopped because they were having their own little vampire panic. And then it kind of died down, but yet there's still people that every once in a while would dig someone up and stake them, or shove rocks in their mouth.
So that soul can't get back in.
Yeah, or so they can't attack people, I guess.
Oh, really?
They can't suck blood if their mouth's full of rocks.
Full of rocks.
Right.
That's where you get that old saying, "Your head's full of rocks."
Yeah.
You're a vampire.
Right, but also there were some people who were saying that she was covering up, because why make a law about vampires and desecration of graves if vampires weren't real?
Okay. So she knew they were real.
Right, so she had to make a law so people would leave them in the ground. And that the only reason why they were coming out of the ground was because people were going and digging them up, giving them a way to get out.
Right, because the graves wouldn't be disturbed at all. And that's why, the myth of that vampires can turn into mist.
Oh.
Is because that's a way for them to get out without disturbing the ground.
Okay.
And then the concept of vampires turning into bats comes from the old Slavic word Stukrowi.
Also say it louder. We can't hear all your mumbling.
Okay, Strigoi. 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 Or Strix. And it
Strixhaven.
kind of means screech owl. And or like an ill-omened bird. So then way back, vampires would be turned into owls. But then when Bram Stoker, wrote Dracula, that's when they were starting to discover vampire bats. And so that was like big news at the time. So then he made it so Dracula turned into a bat instead of an owl.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear. And you know what? I didn't get a chance to write down much of the entertainment lore that created a lot of this.
Yeah.
That it's like it became so ingrained into cinema that it became what you think it is now. And I felt like it was rooted in these old accounts or stories or whatever you want to call them, as well as from Bram Stoker's Dracula, he took stuff from Vlad the Impaler, Elizabeth Bathory, things like that, and crammed them all together.
Yeah, because he spent a lot of time researching it, and he was Irish.
It makes sense because there's a bunch of stuff happened in Ireland too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You have any of that?
Yeah. So what I had seen in Ireland was, well, first of all, I'm gonna look up this Professor Mark Horton guy. I was watching this documentary that he was in, and he was just so ecstatic to talk about buried human remains. He was like, it's so crazy. You find these bodies like this, and who knows what would have happened. He was a character himself. But in Western Ireland in 2004, they were searching for a medieval bishop's palace that dated back to the 12th century. They were kind of written around in this torn down city, and they were excavating under a bunch of flagstones that were laid down. As a floor to a small building. And when they lifted it up, there was just a bunch of skeletal remains just kind of staring back at them. So these bodies were within a 10 by 10 square foot. They found 30 to 40 skeletons all stacked on top of each other right underneath the flagstone. So I don't know if it would have been hastily buried. It was very intentional that they put this stone on top of them. And so between all of those in one spot, the stone put right on top of their faces was pretty peculiar. They started digging in other areas that they initially weren't, because they were initially looking for a palace. And so now they had this other event that they were looking into. So they started digging in these burial mounds.
Yeah.
And they found about the same type of situation. A ton of skeletons stacked on top of each other.
Just all jumbled, you just push them in.
Yeah, something like
Not
that.
like they're stacked.
It didn't quite say that, but that's what it led me to believe. And then so within the area that they found these, so they had dug in let's say three spots, but they were all kind of within a couple of 100 feet of each other. So they estimated that if there was more skeletons buried in the same way, it was between 2,500 and 3,000 people just in this one small area.
Wow.
And this was in 2004. I wasn't able to look up more newer information, but within these skeletal remains that they were uncovering, they found two skeletons that were buried with large stones stuck in their mouth, more than likely because of the vampirism.
Yeah.
And then they found one that they had mangled the body. They had broken a bunch of bones and tied the body up in a way that it wouldn't have been able to put back together again. and they had put a large boulder in around the pelvis area
to like hold him down.
Yeah, to hold him down or like assure that the body couldn't come back to life in a reasonable manner. And so it seemed like it was happening even across the pond in Ireland, England and stuff. So it was interesting how all these different cultures, and they could have had plenty of, communication back and forth,
right?
But nothing like we have today. Like you couldn't just call a buddy and be like, "Hey, I told my wife that I was with you last night, so just cover for me." They're not covering for each other. They're like completely separate happenings.
Yeah, they're like, you couldn't call your buddy and be like, "Hey, there's a vampire over here."
Yeah, there's a vampire over here.
How's it going over there in North Carolina? Like,
I need you to pretend there's a vampire there too.
Oh yeah.
With Bram Stoker being from Ireland, I found one that I forgot to put down the site because it's actually a place that you can go and see. It's under a tree, and there's like this huge rock over top of it, and it's not allowed to be moved. And it's the legend of Aberhattock, but the time period is unknown. This is lore going back like forever.
Let me stop you right there. Aberhattock is a great villainous name, right?
Aberhattock.
Yeah.
That's for sure like an evil guy's name.
Right, and he was a dwarf who lived in a parish called Slahagertov. Slahagertavi. So
that's close enough.
Yeah. But he was magical, and apparently this really cruel tyrant. And he would go and just go to the bar, get drunk, and then just run into somebody, and then it was their fault, so he'd beat the crap out of them. So a neighboring chieftain was called in to come and help. Well, he was killed. So they then buried him standing up because that's what they were told to do. But the next day, he was seen drinking and being more vicious and more cruel. So the chieftain came back, killed him again, reburied him standing up. But he was seen the next day sucking blood from the townspeople. So this time, the chieftain spoke with a druid who told him that the dwarf must be beheaded, buried upside down to stifle his magic, and this large boulder placed on top of the grave to prevent him from coming back a fourth time. And it's actually a place in Ireland where you can go and you can visit. But it's where Bram Stoker was from, and they believe that that's where he got the original idea for Dracula.
I can see that. I can see living in an area that is so prominent with a tale. We don't really have a lot of that around here. There's only one that I've ever heard of, and it's Deer Man.
Deer Man?
Yeah, that's the only one I've ever heard of. Do you have any urban legends around your area in South Carolina, Cam?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
I mean, we've got Roanoke, the lost city of Roanoke, but I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Which
keep going.
The whole thing with Croatoan, and nobody knowing, when they came back, that's all they found on the tree. But people are saying now that the Croatoan were an Indian tribe who actually lived on an island, it would be where Hatteras is now, or the Outer Banks, and they took the settlers to their islands to help save them from what was going on, from starving, and I wouldn't think that being in the middle of the ocean would be better in the wintertime, but who knows. But yeah, so a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's what happened to those settlers, but then there's other people who think that Croatoan is some demonic thing that overtook them, and they just died after the demons used them or whatever.
Yeah, but so it'd be interesting to grow up in an area that has such a strong history like that. A a powerful story or legend or whatever. So.
Well, in 1883, in Exeter, Rhode Island, I think is what it's called, this guy, George Brown, 1883, his wife got sick. Mary Ellis ended up dying. And then his daughter got sick, Mary Olive, and she died. And then his son got sick. He's like, oh man. And back then they called it consumption. It was tuberculosis.
Yeah.
So he sent his son to Colorado to get like fresh air, breathe clean air.
Yeah.
And
they did that.
Yeah. And then, but then his daughter, Mercy, got sick, and they called it rapid consumption. She went downhill fast.
Rapidly.
Yeah. And she ended up dying like right before, because his son wasn't getting better, so he came back home. And townspeople started being like, oh, one of your family is a vampire. You have to dig him up. Like, and then you got to take care of this if you want to help your son, because he's the last one you got. And the farmer, George, was like, okay, I guess. And they got a physician to come out and a couple of like undertakers. And the physician was even like, it's probably not a vampire, but I'll just go and make sure the bodies are handled properly. And the wife was decomposed. The second daughter, she had a full head of hair, but otherwise she was a skeleton. But then when they took Mercy out, like, she hadn't decomposed at all.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, crap. And then, so they removed her heart and her liver, put it on a rock, burned it up, and then took the ashes from that and made a concoction and fed it to the son to help save him from his consumption.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't help.
Oh, damn.
The kid ended up dying. But they pretty much, like, the dad didn't believe it, but because of the neighbors, like, bugging him so much, he's like, okay, fine. And the doctor didn't believe it, but wanted to make sure that they didn't get, like, a shovel through the head or something.
Yeah.
But then there's also several newspapers that were there. So then a bunch of stories came about how backwoods New England is, especially in Rhode Island, and how Hicks, how, you know, and but the people, the main players were like, we didn't believe it, we just did it because our relatives. And then they think that because that was in 1892, and in 1897 is when Dracula came out, so the character Lucy, they think, is based on Mercy, Mercy,
yeah,
and how in the movie, or in the book, Dracula's like slowly wearing her down, so like consumption, until she finally dies and then comes back. And so they also think that was something that he took and put in that book.
Yeah. Yeah, how crazy it is for a thought that, like, how dare you think that your family is cursed by a vampire when your kid is dying, you know?
Yeah.
That's like the equivalent to, like, whenever cancer was really figured out, it's like, well, you mean you're going to try to put radiation into your body to fix you?
Right.
You know? Like, it's, I mean, what do you do in that case?
Right, someone's got to be the first.
Right, exactly. And if it would have worked, everybody would be digging up their old pet relatives to try to figure it out.
Everything that Bram Stoker used in his book were real things. Like the Demeter had run aground and only a few of the crew were found alive. Even on the boat, they think maybe there was a storm, and those crew just kind of tried to limp it into the port. And oddly enough, all the cargo on there was nothing but dirt.
That's crazy.
That is weird.
And then a large black dog was seen running from the hull of the ship after it had crashed. Whether it was coincidence that there just happened to be a dogs nearby. Maybe he ran in there to see what was going on.
But also, it just conveniently was black. Like,
right.
it couldn't have been like a brown and white dog.
Yeah.
Right. But also, Bram Stoker's Dracula isn't the whole book. There are 101 pages missing, plus most of his preface, because the publisher didn't think it would sell because the Jack the Ripper murders were going on at that time. And so he had to cut all of that out. And I forgot to write it down, but like in the 1950, 1960s, somewhere in the New England states, somebody actually found the first 101 pages to the manuscript.
Oh, that sounds cool. I need to find those somewhere.
Yeah, it's like an unabridged version or something.
Yeah.
No, it's just those 101 pages, not the entire book, just those pages that he had to cut. So people are saying that maybe it's a hoax. Nobody's actually seen them. They're just claiming that they found them like in an attic in a trunk in a house that somebody had bought.
I was about to say, when you said 100 whatever pages were missing, I was about to be like, that sounds like lazy writing. That sounds like a publishing gimmick. Some of my favorite like premises for vampire is Elizabeth Bathory and Vlad the Impaler.
Elizabeth Bathory, was she the one that would bathe in her maid's blood?
Yes.
Not her maids. It was not her maids. It was peasant. It was only virgin females.
Rachel, keep going.
Oh, she started with the peasants and apparently started running out and then started on her noblewomen. And that's what caught the eye.
Yeah, when she got... Well, first of all, there was no real evidence that she was bathing in the blood. And she could have been. But what that came from was she was a pretty, like, terrible empress, or countess, rather. She would use, like, spiked gloves when she was reprimanding people. And at one point, she had gotten the blood onto her skin, and she felt like that skin was more youthful after she wiped it off. But yeah, when she was finally arrested, or whatever you want to call it, all of the peasants that she had tortured were like thrown out because they were considered property. And so she only got charged with the noblewomen violence.
Yeah.
She was never taken to trial. She was only arrested and then confined to her castle for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
But no, she actually did kill, like, they think it's around 660 people.
Mm-hmm.
Because she also drank their blood, which is why she's known as the first female vampire.
Okay.
Really?
But she's also, they also use her as the origin for Bloody Mary.
Oh.
I thought that was Mary from the Scots or something.
Well, there's like 4 or 5 different tyrants from back then, but the Countess Bathory is one of them.
Yeah, they just take the worst parts of a bunch of stories you halfway don't remember, right? Kind of wrap it into one.
Yeah.
And some of the things that they say were kind of the cause of the way Elizabeth Bathory was. She was born August 7th in 1760, and in those times there was a lot of inbreeding of the families. So
did you say 1760?
Yeah, I could have had that wrong.
Yeah, definitely. That may. Yeah, because she apparently killed all those people between 1590 and 1610.
I could have the date wrong.
I actually didn't write down when she was born, but that was one of the stories that I left all the gory stuff out of.
When she was born to 2 members of the same family, and I don't know how far apart they were, maybe they were cousins or something. But before the age of 4, it was said that she suffered from epileptic seizures, violent mood swings, and severe migraines. And so, as she was growing up, it was said that like the only way she could relieve these migraines were hearing the screams of her tortured victims.
All right.
Yeah, so it's like it really wraps it into her being that like she had to do this. Like a vampire has to drink blood.
Yeah.
You know, she had to hear her victims screaming so that she could feel peace, I guess. And then Vlad the Impaler, who was born in Wallachia, Romania, he was a 15th century ruler over like in Romania at that time. There were 2 members of the same family, 2 different houses of the same family that were warring, and he had the smaller amount of soldiers at 25,000. 24,000 is what I have written down actually. And his total account of victims is as high as 100,000. And with having the smaller army, he really turns to, if you were captured, they would definitely torture you. And a lot of times Vlad himself would oversee the tortures. So like really instilling fear in the enemy.
Yeah.
Some of the ways was like being skinned alive, total dismemberment, and as his namesake, being impaled and run through on a spike and displayed for others to see. So not only was he doing this stuff, he was like putting heads and bodies on spikes, probably in the field of battle too.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got to run towards your neighbor down the street impaled on a spike.
Right.
That's going to instill some fear.
Like a deterrent.
Yeah. He was also believed to have drank the blood of his victims because it gave him strength, and that was also wrapped into the vampirism.
Yeah. And a lot of people in his town don't like Dracula.
Oh, I bet.
Because it portrays him as like an evil guy, which to do that you got to be some kind of
maniac.
Yeah.
Evil guy.
He also like when the Turks tried to invade Romania, his little army held them back and held them at the border. So he's almost like a hero also.
Yeah, just like that guy who got his head cut off, buried upside down under the boulder. You're living in Transylvania, in Romania, which now has all of this cinematic lore dumped onto it. I wonder how many people go over there and are like, hey, you guys ever seen any vampires around here?
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine how that affects the people there.
Like your local.
Romania embraces it.
Oh,
and
really?
They have vampire. Yeah, yeah, it's a huge tourist trap if you go to Romania.
Kind of like a Mothman. They like build a statue and stuff or something.
Yeah. So like they have vampire festivals and things of that nature. But Vlad was a national hero to Romania. But also with his impaling, he would use that as torture because he would grease the wrought iron pole and like stick it in their butthole and just let them slowly slide down that post. And I'm just like, that, yeah. Anyway, but
that's like, have you ever climbed a wrought iron fence and they have the little spikes on
it? You got to try to get one leg over the other.
Yeah, and then try to not get impaled.
Right. So, but his father was part of, I guess it's pronounced Dracula, Dracula, which means son of the dragon, which was like, I don't know, like if your father's one of those, like a Legion person, what do you call those people? Like not the Illuminati people, but like, those people that drive around on those little itty bitty things,
like a
the little
Shriner,
scooters.
or like the Moose Lodge.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Like a Freemason type
Freemason.
thing?
That's it, yeah. Like a Freemason. So that's where that comes from. So he is son of the dragon, is what that was, because his father was part of this dragon group.
You guys
The
ever check
Order
out
of the
House of the
Dragon.
Dragon?
House of the
Yeah, you
Dragon?
ever check out that House of the Dragon TV show?
Oh yeah, the new Game of Thrones spinoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's a good one. Dave doesn't watch it.
No, I don't watch any. Unless I get made to,
No.
like, yeah.
No, he's
But yeah,
horrible.
Talking about Vlad, how they, really respect him there. It always interests me. The old saying, like, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Right.
Somebody is doing something. Maybe not all the time, but if it's got a big cause of people rallied around it, somebody's doing something because they believe it. And that was just the way he thought his small army could make the impact it needed to win.
Yeah.
Right. And while he was like keeping their freedom for them, like they loved him. He was the hero. They didn't really care what he did. But later on, once that was no longer needed, they actually came to hate him.
Well, and I think I did hear something about what you're saying is a lot when he was first in power, he was doing all this impaling and stuff to the enemy. But when he found people that were doing good, he threw the pouch of gold at them or whatever you want to call it, the opposite of throwing the book at them.
Yeah.
But he would really embrace people who were doing good, is what I had heard.
Right. But also in researching him and Bram Stoker, there's no factual evidence that Bram Stoker even used Vlad as his person. But fun fact, the Dracula castle wasn't even built until like 50 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It's cool that they did build a place you could go.
Yeah. But I think he just used the location, and it just so happens to coincide with Vlad the Impaler. But if you watch the movie, is that Ford Coppola? He used a lot of images of Dracula impaling people. So,
Is that the Dracula Untold?
no, the Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Keanu Reeves.
I don't remember impaling people in that
I
one.
think there's just a lot of war in the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning, but it does show him impaling people. Then he comes back and freaks out.
But that Dracula Untold one's really good. I had that on my list and not watched it.
I mean, it's okay.
Is that the,
It's more like a 300 movie.
I liked that movie.
I don't think Dracula Untold was that good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was thinking about like how Twilight is now like low hanging fruit. Everybody makes fun of that.
Yeah,
Those vampires. But there's like other vampire movies that are like worse. Like was it Bronx one? Where it's like Dracula in the Bronx or with Eddie Murphy.
I remember something like that. I also wanted to watch Once Bitten.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, is that
Oh.
Jim Carrey?
Jim Carrey, yeah.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
I have to check that out.
And you have a favorite vampire? The top three?
Top three. Nosferatu's got to be up there. I really love that movie with the imagery
Yeah.
and how well they use the black and white.
Yeah, that's the movie where you get the myth of the sun destroying the vampire.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the very first time that the sun ever destroyed a vampire.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Davey?
Lestat, the Lion Court.
Well, what's that from?
Interview with the Vampire.
Interview with Vampire.
Vampire Lestat.
It's been a long time since I've seen that one.
Yeah.
That's a good movie, though.
Prince, Queen of the Dam.
I have never seen that. My wife wants to watch that.
There's Anne Rice.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's like
The books are better.
way better. Yeah.
They always are.
Yeah. But yeah, I just finished Vampire Lestat this year. Before we even like started doing this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's probably my top.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Cam? You got a favorite vampire?
So I thought we were doing actors. So like Bela Lugosi is my number one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
For playing Dracula. But if I have to go with the vampire in a movie, it would be Kurt Barlow from Jerusalem's Lot.
I've seen that one.
That's Stephen King. It's Salem's Lot. But the book, the short story is called Jerusalem's Lot? Or am I
Yes.
wrong here?
No, it's called Jerusalem's Lot.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll check out the movie.
What about Strahd?
Strahd for sure.
Von Sverdovich.
I like how it just has become such a trope that it's even been put into role play like that.
D&D. It was funny because I was watching Man Shorts,
Okay.
and they were doing like some metagaming, but they were going to a game store to play. They're like, "You got stuck with dudes." And the girl's like, "Great, what are they playing? Curse of Strahd." So that's like one of those introductory.
Yeah, it's a classic. Like,
Yeah.
What about the girl from Adventure Time? What's that? Starts with an M.
I haven't seen Adventure Time.
I know what you're talking about, but it's like his fling. It's like,
oh yeah, she's cool though. She plays guitar.
Yeah, she's like a goth.
Yeah.
Goth vampires.
Yeah. Adventure Time's a good one. Probably top 10 adult cartoons for me.
Yeah.
Although it's probably more of a kid show.
But it's up there with like Rick and Morty.
I think it's in the same vein.
Or like,
but more for kids.
Like a cooler SpongeBob.
Yeah, I was watching this video, and it was like Jimmy Neutron, which is like 100% a kid show, but also SpongeBob too. And there was like some babe-looking gal that saved their lives, and they all faint, and like the fat one is like, "Well, can you be my mommy?" And it's just like, that's an adult joke. It's so funny how you miss those as a kid, but then you rewatch it, you kind of understand it.
Yeah. Well, that's like the classic Animaniacs one.
Oh, Hello Nurse.
No,
which is
like,
a throwback.
They're dusting for fingerprints, and Dot shows up with prints, and they're like, no, fingerprints. She like looks at him, like, I don't think so.
But going back to the Romanian coffins, something that they do now is they put a cell phone in the coffin with the dead person and like pay for the continue to pay for the person's cell phone.
Yeah.
So that if they do come back to life, they can call their loved ones and they don't need to get out. And to me, that's just creepy. Like if that phone rings and it says dad, like I would freak out if my dad was dead.
Yeah,
right.
That sounds like a crazy misuse of funds.
Well, you'd say that, but back in the day, they would put like food and beer in the coffins with them because they thought they're going to get hungry in the afterlife, so you gotta feed them. And they used to actually leave holes, and every once in a while they would come and dump beer, food down in there.
It's just like falling right on the corpse's face.
Yeah. So, a cell phone in there is just the modern day of that.
Yeah. I did see like the stake through the heart, and it seemed like through the heart was pretty common, but I saw like stories of like multiple stakes, stakes through the brain, but a lot of times they would put a stake through the body into the ground, so it would like ground the body, and the soul had a way to get to ground and escape.
Okay, I've also seen it where they're like they stab it into the coffin and like beat it to pin the body down. Yeah, and I've also heard that not right away, but later on that they would make it out of ashen wood because supposedly that's what the cross was made out of.
Oh, okay.
So the part of the demonic aspect to it, you got it. Nail with the cross.
Yeah, I didn't look at anything with like why they fear the crucifix, but I would guess it has something to do with religion, and that this seemed to kind of all come from demons and religion before.
Yeah, because you can either be bitten by a vampire to get turned, get possessed by a demon and become a vampire, or just live an unholy life, or commit suicide and then come back as a vampire.
Yeah, I heard a good talk about that, where it was like if somebody lived such a bad life and they die, their soul goes to purgatory, and then you have to repent, which means you're getting tortured like crazy. So if you lead a bad enough life, you definitely don't want to be tortured for the rest of the afterlife.
Yeah.
So the soul will try to escape to get back into the body. And I'm like, that for sure makes sense to me. If you're like, everyone is religious because that's all you got on television.
Yeah.
Like, of course you would consider that they were so evil and doing bad shit in real life. Why wouldn't they try to escape that
Yeah.
and do more bad shit?
Well, yeah, because they said because you're undead, that goes against the natural order, which then goes against God, and that it, at the least, it's unholy, and at the worst, it's like a demonic possession kind of situation.
Yeah.
So that's why all the crosses and holy water kind of go against it. And
right. Sorry, David, go ahead.
And the mirror thing, why they can't see themselves in the mirror.
Oh, yeah.
Is because way back in the day, vampires and werewolves were interchangeable.
Oh, okay.
Like the word meant the same thing for both. That's Strigoi. Kind of works for both. And silver, werewolves don't like silver. Back in the day, how you made a mirror was you coat the back of it with silver. So then, of course, it's not going to reflect it because it's one of the things that you can't have.
Yeah. That's crazy to think that, and maybe that's something I had heard before, mirrors coated with silver. But like, man, only rich people would have silver, right?
Yeah, not everybody had a mirror.
Yeah.
Or glass.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with the unholy thing, there was a movie, I can't think of it, where after Jesus dies, Judas hangs himself, and Judas is the first vampire.
Oh, that sounds like a good one.
Yeah. Well, in Jewish culture, in their books, it was Lilith, who was Adam's first wife, but they think
it's in the Bible too.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay, but she left to go be the queen of the demons, or she also got kicked out because she didn't want to be a subordinate to Adam. So then they're like, well, you gotta go, let's bring in Eve. Right? And so then her story is that then she goes around and drinks the blood of babies and their moms, or she's will steal the babies. So she's also one of the first female vampires.
Lilith is the mother of all demons. And in the Bible it says God created man and woman, and then Genesis, I don't know, my Bible, whatever, it later says God puts Adam to sleep and then makes Eve from his rib. And people miss that. But the Jewish people are the only people who have given Lilith an actual name. And depending on what theology you're looking at, Lilith had sex with Adam and Eve's children after they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and then she got pregnant, and what she birthed was demons.
Oh, that's crazy. A real, what's that? Baby. Something. Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, yeah.
Real Rosemary's Baby situation there.
Yeah.
Cam, thanks so much for coming on the show. You got any last words for us?
No. I mean, congratulations on 2 years. That's really awesome. And,
thanks.
I'm rooting for you guys to get more years.
Yeah, thanks.
I couldn't have done it without you, Matt.
Oh, you know you couldn't have.
You work all the ones and twos, you do all the magic behind the scenes.
And I wouldn't have done it without you.
Oh,
Dave.
thanks.
Thanks so much, Cam. Say bye to the people.
Bye.
All right, have a good one. What a great time with Cam. Thanks for getting her on, baby.
Yeah, well, thanks for, like I said, working the stuff behind the scenes. Working.
Of course. And here's to another 2 years, and can't wait to see what we do on a third. Take care of yourselves, everybody.
Yes, and remember, don't say blah, blah, blah.